All right, folks. So, Brian Patrick Horgan, chiropractor, Jersey City, New Jersey. So I've been thinking about, over the years, I've had people come in and they've been grieving the loss of a loved one. Someone passed away, and they said, some say they just know that coming to the chiropractor for that will help them with this. And I don't counsel them. They just get adjusted and then they go on their way. So I thought about it. What's that really about? It was like D.D. Palmer talking about how chiropractic connects the spiritual with the physical. And I really think that helps that people process the loss of a loved one. And I was thinking about these two videos I sent out. One was called actually I'm not going to go into that. That would be a whole lot. Right now, we're going through a big acceleration. And it's intense. It's just, I have people come in with all these wild stuff. They're so hurting, and I just think, my sense of it is, what do I mean by an acceleration? It's like those of us, people that said yes to being all in, to making ourselves the best we can be, or to be connected to God. Those people that are doing that, everyone's going through the acceleration, but I think by going to the chiropractor, it helps you understand it better. It helps you process the emotions of it. If there's any physical discomfort, it helps you focus on that, because it's just going to get more and more intense the next few months. And then by the end of the year, it will smooth out. But just be ready, because you see more and more people coming into you who probably normally wouldn't go to a chiropractor, and they're just going to be like, wow, whatever this is it. So all this stuff Pasquale spoke about after all these years and all this stuff, it's here. And it's here. And I know we at Self Center are ready for it. So that's all I want to say. Does anyone want to ask me anything? There's Miss Nancy Brown. Anyone want to ask me anything? One more time. All right, that's it for me.
I was trying to think of a question.
All right.
I'm sorry.
All right, so Alex raised his hands.
Hey everybody, Alex Wilkowitz, chiropractor in Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania. It's interesting that Brian just mentioned about people coming in who maybe wouldn't normally go in today. I had two new people who actually moved to the area. They used to go very regularly to a great chiropractor down in the Allentown area, and it's pretty cool because they really get it. It seems like most of the people I see in my office have either not been to a chiropractor in a long time, or they've never been to one before. So it's kind of cool to actually have people in, it was a mother and adult son, and he's 24, but within 3 hours of being born, he was adjusted. So it was very, very cool to see them, and they've been looking for a while to find somebody who actually does a more traditional approach. They were going to somebody who just did instrument adjusting. So that was really cool and nice. Next month, I'm going to be 25 years that I've been a chiropractor, so that's pretty exciting. I've noticed there's a lot I'm forgetting. And I've been trying to read back through a lot of chiropractic philosophy and some other stuff. And it's really wild to revisit stuff that I had read back in the 90s and have a different perspective, being a bit older and more time working on people and just being really all in with this profession. And it's really exciting just to almost have new eyes looking at this stuff and just getting a different perspective. Right now I'm pushing through Strauss, and then I want to get to some BJ and Didi and then the Giacomo, but that's it.
Okay, anyone like to ask Alex anything? Anyone? Anyone? One more time, anyone? Edward X. Young?
You're not driving back to Bloomsburg tonight, are
No, actually, I really wanted to come tonight. I've been
Yeah.
dealing with some stuff with my father has not been in the best shape. but I got a room in the city.
Okay, all right.
So, yeah, I knew it would
I would
be
advise
treacherous.
against it.
Yeah.
Anyone else wanna ask Alex anything? Anyone? One more time, folks, anyone? Alright, we'll clap for Alex. And congratulations, 25 years, that's a great day.
What's the actual date?
March 27th was
Okay.
technically the end of school,
Okay.
and March 29th was my first day. Well, my license was issued by Pennsylvania.
Oh, I should have asked that when he was up there.
Anyone else wanna come up? You got Bob, you got Nancy, or Edward X. Young?
Yes. Hi, this is Edward X. Young, and you all know me, and this is unusual because I missed out on a lot of these sessions when I was on the road traveling around the country to all the Trump rallies that I was going to. But I was here yesterday. And it's really something. I came here yesterday because even though I live about 70 miles south of here in Brick, New Jersey, and even though I've got a chiropractor I see there, who I've been seeing since my car accident because originally the insurance paid for it, and he's a good guy, but he isn't like you people. I mean, he's got the bells and the whistles, the electricity that he puts in your back, and the stretching machine, and I've been having a problem with I don't know. Well, Brian knows because I've told him where it's like my knee. It's like the tendons behind my knee are out of whack, and sometimes my leg gives out. And when I asked the guy I see, who's not an old school hands-on guy, more of a BJ kind of guy, could you help my knee? And he goes, oh, I'm a chiropractor. I do spines. And I'm like, well, the chiropractors I know up north, I mean, they would look at my knee or my ankle. So I did come here last night, and I still need some more work on it, but Brian it's much better getting the tendon snapped into place. But I'm glad to be back here, and I always feel good when I come here. I'm 65 years old now. I like to think I look younger, but you know, I'm at the age where people I know are, you know, they just reach in the. Last week, 3 friends of mine who are about my same age all died on the same day. And all cancer deaths, but I'm just, you know, it gets me down, and this is a life-affirming place. So I'll find, even if it's snowing, I even thought, I was almost scared of coming down here. I figured I'm gonna drive 70 miles with a snowstorm coming, and I thought, yeah, I'm gonna do that. So I'm here the second day in a row, I'm here. Maybe I should have just gotten a hotel room and stayed last night.
Anything?
Yes.
Anyone want to ask Edward X. Young, the actor, anything? Anyone? Edward X. Young, where are you from in New Hampshire? Where did you grow up?
I grew up in the town, when I grew up there,
Yeah.
it was the town of Bedford, and they didn't have a school system then, they do now, but I went to school in Manchester,
Okay.
the largest city in the state. I went to Manchester West High School, I loved it. I lived all over the country growing up, and I spent 4 solid years there in high school. And then I moved away, and with my first marriage, marrying a Jersey girl from Newark, and she wanted to get away from that experience, I moved back to New Hampshire for 9 years. I lived in Peterborough at that time. Little town in the mountains, population of less than 6,000 even today. And it is Thornton Wilder's our town. And sadly, when I was living there, Peterborough had the selectmen. They didn't have a mayor. They had like 3 selectmen there. Like if you read Stephen King novels, you know, but that's how cities, little towns are governed there. But when I was there, they preserved the integrity of the town. And I was gone for a few years, and when I was back late last year doing Trump stuff, I was like, oh my God, they've totally restructured this town. They were supposed to leave it alone. It was supposed to remain Thornton Wilder's our town. But I spent nine nice years, except for my bad marriage at the time, which ended in a divorce. But I spent 9 years in Thornton Wilder's our town. You know, if you read the play, the streets, well, when they existed the way they did when I was there, you feel like you're in the play. And if you go to the local Anglican cemetery there, the names of all the characters in the play are on those tombstones.
Anyone else like to ask
Since you
Edward
asked.
X. Young anything? Anyone? All right, Ed.
All right, thank you.
Great
Thank
job.
you.
Excellent, Ed. Does anyone from the Zoom world want to speak? We got Sarah, Nancy, or Bob. You don't have to, but the offer is there.
I'll speak.
All right, Senor Bob.
not one. Alex was talking about, with the philosophical books, and that triggered a memory that I had when I had a conversation with Pasquale one time. We were talking about Stevenson, who had the 33 Principles philosophy book. And I can remember in school, they had us reading that, and then we had to discuss it in class. I just remember most of the students were just not into it, and they weren't getting it. And I think the reason why I understand it better now is because Pasquale was saying to me, he said, Bob, he said the 33 principles is much too complicated of life. He says it's real simple. You breathe in, you pause, and you breathe out. Or if you're at the beach, the ocean, the tide comes in. When it comes in, there's a pause, and then it goes back out. And when he said that, I said that's beautiful, because it makes things so much more simple. And that's the principle of life. That's all I got to say.
All right. Anyone want to ask Senior Bob anything? Anyone? Anyone? Go ahead, Ed.
How's the weather where you are?
I think it's pretty good. I was out earlier, so I don't know now. Like, I haven't been out since this morning.
He's about 4 miles away from here, air mileage.
Okay, air mileage.
Yeah. We're right across the river
Oh,
from
okay, so
Manhattan, and he's in Queens. All right. Anyone else want to ask Senior Bob anything?
Yeah, well, what part of Queens?
Astoria.
Okay, I know it well. I lived in Jackson Heights for about 7 years in the 80s.
Anyone else want to ask
Astoria.
Edward X. Young anything?
One second.
Anyone? All right. Anyone want to ask Bob anything? I'm saying
Yes,
anyone
sorry.
ask Bob
I was
Juan anything.
confused.
Excuse me. All right then, Bob. Thank you. Great job. Well, sort of clicked off. So Nancy, do you want to say something? Okay.
Yeah, I do. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, wonderful. Okay. Just to say that it's been 4 years since I was injured. And you all know that I was really very temporarily handicapped. And I'm so grateful because I'm walking around now without any pain. Just so grateful to my chiropractor in Florida, and to Brian, and to Pasquale, and just to know that healing and health it is not about what the majority think it's about. And I'm going to be 74 next month, and I see people my age that are all hunched over and can't walk and in terrific pain. And I'm just so grateful that I've had chiropractic. I have nothing earth-shattering to say except everyday gratitude, every single day. I'm just so grateful. I wake up happy, thank you, God. That's pretty much it.
All right. Anyone else? Would anyone like to ask Nancy anything? Anyone? Let me see. One more time. Anyone?
Yeah, I want to add something. I wish
All right.
you were all in Florida with me. It's 73 here, and it's one day we'll have a self-center meeting in Florida somehow.
Well, what part of Florida are you in?
I'm in Boca Raton, which
Okay.
is southeast.
I know.
Anyone else like to ask? Bob, you want to ask Nancy something?
Nancy, I forgot. How did you get injured?
I woke up one morning and I could barely walk. So
Wow.
something happened in my sleep and my lower back. And then when that was just starting to heal a little bit, I broke my ankle a year after. So it was 2 years of very chronic problems, and then another 2 years of tune-ups, let me say.
Yeah. Anyone else like to ask Nancy anything? Real quick, Nancy, what part of Queens did you grow up in?
Good question. I was born in Jackson Heights, and I lived in Flushing.
Very good. Anyone else want to ask Nancy anything? That's just,
Nancy, did you have any insight on like the spiritual level of why you went through what you went through?
Yeah, it was a big purification for me, and it allowed me the time to do the spiritual work that I needed to do in my life to move into the next phase. So I'm actually grateful for it, as painful as it was.
all right then. Well, let's clap for Nancy. Thank you. So we're gonna bring up the featured speaker now, Fernando Mendez.
Right.
What happened to your wife?
Probably Jack needed something.
Oh.
Good evening, everyone. Fernando Mendez,
Good evening.
chiropractor, Brooklyn. Where do I stand? Right here?
Yeah.
I don't know my mark.
No, stand
I
here.
think, yeah.
So that will pick you up and that will pick you
All right,
up.
I'm going to stand here for now, but I'm going to go straight to the whiteboard.
All right.
The last time I spoke, I finished my talk speaking about imagination. I'm going to start there tonight. I'm going to write the word
I'm gonna get out of the way.
All right, and I know you guys back on the Zoom can't see this, so I'll talk it through. But this is just gonna help these guys kind of stick with me. So last time we talked about imagination, I pointed out the word magi here and just equated it to magic, and then obviously the word magi, and that's like the biblical reference: the three wise men, the three kings. I'm going to call that 2A. And then over here I'm going to put 2B because I'm going to come back up here. The day of the Magi, the Three Kings Day, is also known as the Epiphany. Okay? So I'm going to equate those two guys together. And the Epiphany is the manifestation of Christ to the Gentiles as presented to the Magi. So what I was speaking about last time was that, that we're going through these life processes, we're all kind of raising ourselves up to become gods. And that we need imagination for all this. And when I broke down the word, you got the magic, the magi, the wise men, and now I'm talking about epiphany. And the I see it as freedom, as like this process we see throughout history getting more freedom, becoming more individualized. So when I was looking at this word more recently, I just looked up like what is the definition of imagination? And I got, it's the faculty of the mind that forms and manipulates images. And obviously you see the word image in imagination. When you think of it that way, I automatically kind of see how it all kind of pieces together. With the Christians say at the end of it, or being a Christian is about imaging out God to other people. So, working off of this idea about the imagination from the last meeting, in January, there was the college football playoffs, and Notre Dame was playing against Penn State. And Notre Dame is the Fighting Irish, and they have the little leprechaun on their hat. And I grew up watching college football, and you had the Irish. So I'm familiar with that little leprechaun. And then growing up in Brooklyn, I grew up in what used to be a really predominantly Irish neighborhood. Still had a lot of Irish people. So those Irish little leprechaun hats were everywhere. I had my fill as a kid. But when I look at that now, when it came up, the Notre Dame game came up, and I thought about that logo. I automatically thought about Darby O'Gill and the Little People. And I grew up with Irish people. I've been to Ireland. That's plenty of Ireland for one person. But nothing really captured Ireland to me or really speaks to me as that movie did. And that's a really wild ride. It really engages the imagination. So I had this urge to watch it. And then I mentioned it to my buddy Alex over here. I'm like, you know what? I want to watch Darby O'Gill and the Little People. He was like, I never heard of it. I was like, how have you never heard of Darby? You've been coming down, like hanging out with us for 6 years, you've never heard us mention this? I feel like we're talking about it constantly. So it was a surprise. I'm guessing everybody on Zoom has heard of it. And Edward, do you know what Darby O'Gill and Little People?
Yeah, it's Sean
Okay.
Connery's
Yeah, it's
first movie.
his first movie, exactly. Okay,
Yeah.
so you're on board. You're on board.
Right.
The reason I bring this up with the imagination was, by chance, I happened to go to the Self-Center website to look at one thing about Pasquale adjusting Hague, and I was really impressed by it. It's at the bottom of the first title page. And then I thought to myself, like, what is on the top? What's the first thing you see if you come to the Self-Center webpage? I don't remember. I put all that stuff up there, but some of it's been up there for years. So I listened to the talk Pasquale gave, and it was, pretty intense in my book. It was, it was probably like a 5-minute talk, man. He just goes through everything at, full speed ahead. And it was wonderful to be able to understand all that he was talking about, because at one point all this stuff was wild to me, and I didn't understand what was going on. And going back through notes is a process I've been going through, and I see that how much time I've spent with this material, and it's pretty incredible, and trying to organize it all for myself to understand. But getting back to Darby O'Gill, the imagination, Pasquale says in this really intense talk, the one point I pulled out of it, and it goes back to what Bob was saying. He goes, magical bodies are made by magical minds. And he points to Darby O'Gill as that leprechaun who can just pull something out of his bag. He says, that's how life can be, and what Bob was talking about, in that pause. In that moment when we go to adjust, the pause, he's equating to the leprechaun, or how heaven will be, where you go in your pocket and need $1.50, you'll have $1.50. This magical idea. And Pasquale talked about serving the adjustment that way. He always made the equation to food. Or the idea that you could be a very mechanical person and just put the bones back into place, really kind of force the issue. And that works. But he said maybe you want to give better food, be a little bit more finesse. And he said the quality to have that magical touch, to be in that magical moment, to what Bob was saying about that simplicity of breathing in, breathing out, the waves coming in and out. He said, well, from what I put together now of this art, it is being humble to the whole thing. And the humility comes in recognizing it's not me necessarily doing, I'm obviously participating, but there's bigger powers at play, okay? I'll say a couple of quotes that I just had on my wall, and I didn't know where to use them, but they came to use tonight, was the magic is not in the medicine, but in the patient's body. Or another quote I had was, all who are cured by him, the healer within. So when you take ideas like that, you obviously humble yourself in this whole process. And that's what Pasquale was saying about getting into that, I believe, getting into that pause. You're humble, and you let stuff come through you to serve the people. Didi had some quote, I couldn't find it, but I found a bunch of other material from Didi when I was looking for it, where he mentions all the names of the different gods in the world and says, at the end of the day, this is what everybody has kind of credited, all the smartest people have credited. So, he was in the same boat with that. Pasquale described it as us getting it given to us by our spiritual friends. And that we kind of have to be open to it and request it. And that through our spiritual friends, we're providing the Holy Spirit to our people. And that gets really, talking about this stuff, imagination, the epiphany, magic, they're all really can get really headsy stuff. But bringing it down to the nitty gritty or the real material of it, we can always use the idea of having the scar heal. Everybody's had a scar. After a while, it heals. So there's a healing process within us. It can get very concrete. I don't know if that's a self-evident truth, but I think it's pretty simple to understand it from that point, not having to go through all of these ideas. Now, Pasquale said in this same video, he said, that's how healing works. You don't even have to think about it. He goes, that's the beauty part of it. Just serve the people and everything should go straight forward with these thoughts. So that's the place I try to get myself to, I try to learn about. But Pasquale even mentions this, sometimes there could be a mental hindrance in the person. You remove that and everything moves forward. Now, he just passed over it kind of quickly, but I think what we notice is there are a lot of mental hindrances in people, blocking them. They don't recognize these powers that they can get in touch with for free. And when I saw these hindrances, then I'm working through the New Testament now, and I probably am through like 20% of it. You quickly see, when I was going back through it, Jesus dealing with the people he was healing. The biggest factor was if they had faith, and he would say, because of your faith, you've been healed. So it wasn't necessarily, he was obviously acting upon them, but they had to be receptive through their faith. So now we're looking at the other side of the equation. I was talking about being the chiropractor and coming in there and getting into that moment. From looking at the New Testament, you see Jesus pointing at the people, or at least this message I was getting was like, their participation through their faith was also a critical factor. And you see that when he talks about going into his hometown and not being able to heal the people because they knew him as just a carpenter's son. So even Christ cannot overcome these limitations. So what can we do? I'm actually going to try to educate my people, and I'll get to that in a second. Going through that New Testament, one of the bigger things I got also was John 3:18. It's something we've talked about down here, that we don't judge people. But a little while ago, I was here and I was like, I make judgment calls all day on people, like how hard am I going to push? How am I going to give care? But when I look at this John 3:18 and with the idea of me not judging people, I see when they, it's sometimes, I've grown in anger, resentment sometimes when people don't come back. I don't understand it. What's going on? I'm trying to open all the ways for them to come in. And I realize now, just thinking about this of me not judging them, is they judge themselves, is they choose, obviously it's a free world. You choose whether or not you come in to see me. And thinking about it was at one point when I was younger, I just got to chiropractic school, not a lot of money. I went to the health food store. I had to decide, am I going to buy this more expensive, higher quality food, or am I not? And I think many people make that decision. I was like, it was so odd. Like, do I deserve this? Like, am I good enough for this? Who am I to get the more expensive food? It was a strange choice, but I chose the more expensive food. I was like, my mom would say, if you don't take care of yourself, who is? And I would just kid around my buddies, you gotta treat yourself special. So that was a good change in focus that I got recently, just going through that New Testament bit. Going back to the faith part, Pasquale, in one of the quotes we always repeat down here, he went to it at the crux of it. He said, it's only because of this current state of negativity and lack of faith in our own power and existence that we have all this sickness, disease, and suffering. And going back to Darby O'Gill, he had faith in the leprechauns. We also had faith in the Catholic priest. But it was something more than faith. Like, I could say, I have faith in this and that. He had like a buddy. That leprechaun was his buddy. Like, he gets upset with it. They both get upset at each other at one point. At one point, he really gets upset. He's like, how can you do this to me? All that we've been through, we've had all these wild times, and now this is how we're going to end our relationship. So it was a little bit more than just he had faith in the leprechauns. He was like a companion to them. And I was discussing this with somebody, my wife, and she didn't have the same view of Darby O'Gill, She thought he was like a dumb old guy. I don't know exactly what she wanted to say, but I saw he had been humbled. He had experienced the leprechauns, and he had been humbled to all these wild things out there. But it also goes to show his relationship with that we need each other, and that's something Pasquale would talk about, that there's a connection between us and that spiritual world. He would talk about how when the information he would get, he had to share it so they could get more. And also that when we call upon these forces, they're obliged to help us to a certain degree. And one of the things you see in the New Testament is that Jesus commands things. He commanded a fever to stop. He commanded demons to exit people, And you go, wow, I can barely, what can I do? But sometimes you do, as a chiropractor, give that second thrust, So you could think of it as forcing the issue, but sometimes I've had the experience where you really want to help this person, and you do get the results you're kind of looking for. So almost putting demands upon the greater powers that, show up and help this person at this moment. But now I want to go back, to keep it not so off on the spiritual or, not keep it so spiritual or in the mental region, but go back to like the physical aspects of this. I don't even know how I'm going to get through this, but I brought my own little marker here, Brian, to distinguish the first part to the second
If you
part.
want to erase that, then
It's a dry erase, right?
No, I'm not going to erase it. I want to keep this all up here. I want to play with this. So excuse me while I draw this in here. I'm going to kind of draw a representation of the spine, the vertebrae in there, the lumbar kyphosis. I'm going to put a heart here. And I'm limited in space, but I'm going to put the words earth, heart, and art here. Because I want to bring it back down to this level where we're working at. Here I would say, what can we be certain of? We speculate, we talk about it, we try to imagine it. But here's where we're working every day on the vertebral column. And the story we've been telling our people, chiropractic has been about the neural system. And last time I was down here, I was saying how we're going to try to get out of the Squally wasn't working in the flesh system anymore. He was talking more about the bone system. I'm going to grab one thing here, one of my notes. So, at the bone here, Pasquale we would talk about the epiphysis is where we're putting in our force. This is the softer spot, you can say, in the joint area. This is still not completely hardened. It's still cartilage. It's a little bit softer. It's still adaptable. It still can be changed. Let me keep flipping through here. Going back for a second, because there's going to be a lot through here. Getting away from that neurological system, we're explaining just through their neurology. I recently wrote up a little brochure for my people, and it was nothing new. It was like an edition about natural health and hygiene. And taking chiropractic out of just the neurological world and putting it into this world of the body being cleansed. The first thing I talk about in this little brochure, and this brochure, I put it out for my people, but I don't even think most chiropractors can understand it because it's kind of new to our self-centered group. So, I'm going to fly through this a little bit because it's really not the crux of it, but thinking about this natural health, I talk to people about inflammation. People come in all the time, my knee hurts, this hurts. They told me it's because of the inflammation. Is it still inflamed? Can I get rid of the inflammation? And it's a lot to explain to this person, and I could reference them to here or try to get the idea that they need, the inflammation is there for a reason. That heat helps break down toxins, it helps remodel the body. That inflammation, that water, transport things in and out, and it's for their benefit. It's helping them. That a lot of cultures and people have tried to get heat into the body for therapeutic reasons, like a sauna. I tell them massage, exercise, applying hot and cold. These just move the fluids. So we're not necessarily just trying to get rid of the inflammation. I tell them when remodeling a house, the first step is demolition of the old structures. A similar process goes on inside of us. And I go through some of the things we experience, like mucus. Why do we have mucus? To get foreign stuff out of us. Why do we cough? Why do we sneeze? To push things out of us. I talk about vomiting, diarrhea. None of these things are pleasant, but it's excreting. We're cleansing ourselves. This idea you see in the Bible at one point on Luke 5:13. In some readings it says, be well. In others, in most of them it says, be cleansed. He's specifically talking to a leper in these things. So I have here like the scientific explanation, but also you see it biblically. Now, how does chiropractic deal with this cleansing? Well, as I explained to them, that these things get stuck in their body, and the chiropractor puts in a force into that body that corresponds to the abnormal tension we feel. The Squally would say we go through the epiphysis, it would kind of start, or at least in that joint space. Now, the interesting whole part I drew this whole thing was the realization that came to me is, we talked about before, there's an epiphysis on the bones, and up here, there's the epiphysis cerebri, which is the pineal gland. And I'm not going to go into a big discussion about the pineal gland. That you can find hours and hours on YouTube about the pineal gland. But we have the epiphysis on the body, on the bone, down below. Then we have the epiphysis cerebri up here, the pineal gland. And I immediately saw the epiphysis, the writing of that word, and the epiphany. So it made it just more and more clear for me. Now I'm going to even go sidetrack a little bit more because I couldn't help it. When I was looking up some stuff for this, D.D. Palmer had a lot to say, well, not a lot, but he had a few pages of writing to talk about hygiene. And it kind of made my little brochure that I just wrote up for my people it's almost completely different. Or just a different way he attacks it. And I'm going to read some of this stuff here because it was so enjoyable to read today, in contrast to what I have written. He says, chiropractic has not formulated a system of certain prescribed fixed rules, because what is food for one person is poison for another. He says, therefore, take thy time, eat, drink, and be merry, knowing that chiropractic as a science will not only preserve but restore your health. Observe chiropractic hygiene, that it may be well with thee, and thou mayest live long on the land. Go where you may, you will observe that the man, woman, or child who takes no thought for the morrow, the one who takes life easy, eats, drinks, and is merry, is the one who enjoys the good things of life, and lives long in the land. He references St. Matthew here. He references Matthew here, who has the same things to say. He talks about here, the natural term of life of an animal is 5 times the period of its development. Man is not fully matured. All the epiphyses united to their diaphyses until the age of 25 to 30. 5 times 25 gives us 125 years as the natural lifetime, providing that the same care and judgment is used as that of the lower animals. Now he had much to write. These are pages 859 and 860 in 1910. He writes, daily exercise, short of fatigue, calmness of mind, moderate intellectual powers, a family life, and a merry disposition are aids to longevity. But my favorite part here is when he talks about some examples. He goes, many aged persons attribute their long lives to excessive use of stimulants. At least they did not observe the rules of regulations of hygiene as laid down by the laws of life. Mary MacDonald, I'll say a black woman, he didn't write that here, he used an old term, who died at the advanced age of 135 years, was an inveterate smoker. Thomas Wishart died in 1760 at 124 years. He had chewed tobacco for 117 years. John de la Somette of Virginia died in 1766, age 130. He was a great smoker. The use of tobacco seemed to agree with him. William Riddle lived 116 years. He avoided water all his life, but had a thirst for brandy. He was not a hydropath or a temperance crank. Dr. A.T. Still, which I think is the guy who did osteopathy, is past 80 years of age, but looks like a man of 60. He chews an infinite amount of tobacco. So he says, eat, drink, and be merry, that your days may be long in the land. So a different take, obviously we've heard that kind of stuff before, but he's saying already that the adjustments will help with this whole cleansing process. It's kind of at the fore of his thinking already for the hygiene of the body. So going back to the epiphyses, traveling up here to the pineal gland, getting the epiphany, let me go back to talking about the bone. And what I talked about before, Pasquale it was going to be a different system. One we see, I mentioned before, in Ezekiel, where the bones come to life. In the New Testament, they talk about people being reborn not just of flesh, or water, but of the Holy Spirit. And we would say that travels through the bone. And a wonderful little image Pasquale gave us was of how the bones is fiber optics. And I had these notes I just came across this morning from years ago. And I did a little research back when Pasquale was still alive, about fiber optics and bones. And they were at that point, I've talked about it before, they were trying to get people to be able to click their teeth together and communicate somehow through the bone system. And doing this research, they said bones have a higher carrying capacity than the flesh, the nerves. They have less signal degradation. You can have a clearer conversation and reception. They even said in this article that it was ideally suited for carrying the digital information. So those fiber optics, they travel through that wire, and the signals don't go straight lines. They bounce off the outer shell all around, the cladding. And the signal is only diminished by impurities. So when we talk about chiropractic going into that spine, we're clearing up the impurities so that the messages can travel. It said that a woman of 110 pounds, her bones weigh about 7.5 pounds. So bones are light and the flesh is heavy. I had it before, but I don't know how much weight a femur can take, but it's over like 1,000 pounds. It's pretty wild. And another thing, when I was looking into the bones today, just what I had written down years ago, was the piezoelectric effect. And this is obviously more a little technical thing for us chiropractors, but the fact that bones generate a small electrical field when a force is applied to them. So, the trip from here to here, I just laid out, and we could just want to be up in here, the heavenly part, but we're here, and I think this is where we're supposed to be, obviously. And it's nice to think about these thoughts, but the real work is here, at the heart level. And that means having compassion for the people who come in, and in a sense, being, one of the themes of the New Testament is being very forgiving. And what I noticed was that the anger, resentment sometimes I had with my people was they weren't taking the chiropractic as I would hope they would. Kind of like, I don't know. But once I got over these little insults, of them not following the rules of my office, it became much easier. For example, I used to have people take off their shoes, and it was like a struggle sometimes. It was weird, because it's okay, I'm I just can't have you stomping all over my table. Like, I can't have everybody stepping on my table with their shoes because it's really gonna ruin my table. But some people weren't really, it was a struggle to do that. So fortunately I was able to put plastic over those parts of the table, and now it's made my life a lot easier. So there was a solution, but most of it is just forgiving people and still taking care of them, regardless of the nuttiness I feel like they bring in. And coming down here to this heart level is also, I've been having the saying, wisdom is doing. So you do have the wise men over here in the spiritual realm, in the mental realm, but wisdom is doing is like the actual application of these things happens down here. This is where the material, physical aspects of the world are. And chiropractic is we have the idea of SSS, of small sequential steps, or chiropractic being a stepping stone to what is to come. What is to come? Well, these bones will awaken, and where will that light come from? From up here, from that pineal gland. And the bones are the conduit for that light. And down here, I don't want to ignore this region, but this region somebody else will talk more thoroughly about. But that's a sacral region, but that we also, this is my earth and heart, and this is my heavenly. This would be like our beast sleep part down in here. Just to segment the spine a little bit, I had here my notes. And to keep it real. I had a plan of talking about the economics of this all. The financial implications of what chiropractic has to offer. And I found just a little note from Pasquale that probably sums it up better than me going through all these details of current events. And he had the idea, he had the word corporate. As you see the word corpus in there, and core. He had the word core and poor. Poor, he went for the pus. So the corporates were full of pus in their heart. The core is the heart. It was full of pus. And what we really need is to have companies. Or the idea of kind of a companionship, and that companus literally means sweetbread. Something better than a heart full of pus. And that is all I have to say tonight.
Okay. Anyone want to ask Fernando anything?
Yes.
Action.
Gee, I quit smoking cigarettes 13 years ago. You saying I could safely go back with proper adjustments?
I will say one thing, like those, back then, maybe in Dee Dee's time, I think there are a lot of hazards that you got to watch out for today that didn't exist back then. Things that they couldn't even conceive of maybe harming, like a chicken harming you. Like now you can have a bad chicken and it could hurt you or something, So you got to watch out.
Anyone else want to ask Fernando anything? I'll stand up.
I have another question.
Wait, let Bob.
Oh, okay, all right.
All right,
two
Bob and then
people.
Nancy.
All right.
Did Dee Dee Palmer receive chiropractic adjustments, and who was adjusting him if he did?
Oh, I'm guessing. I should be speculating. I'm guessing he was getting adjustments. I don't know who. Yeah, that's a good question.
Do you know Bob?
I don't.
All right, Nancy.
This is a question well, first I want to thank you, Fernando, for your presentation, putting a lot of ideas together, so thank you for that, waking us up here, so this is good. I wonder about chiropractic and cleansing of emotional trauma. I wonder if Pasquale spoke about that. Does emotional trauma get stored in the bones? Is it something that chiropractic addresses? Somebody who's experienced some kind of abuse or neglect. How do you see that with chiropractic healing?
Yeah, you know, one of the things I saw, yeah, it definitely deals with the emotional. One of the clear examples I saw, you know, in the book by Werner, he's talking about the neurology, but he even says if you just look at somebody with a certain posture, you know, if you're stooped, you know, it would tend to be a depressive person. A person who has a lot of tension in their shoulders, you know, you can look at a person and go, man, that guy's angry. Or that guy's really uptight. You know, we can see it, and obviously as a chiropractor, you can feel it. Now, I might not know exactly why you have that, what the emotional stretch is stemming from, but we could feel it in there, you know? And maybe, you know, we can't tell the difference between maybe a certain car accident or thing, but we can pick up on things, but the tension is there, and our job is just to remove that.
And
So,
I'd also like
yes.
to ask Fernando anything.
Yeah, just epiphany, epiphysis. What's the real word? Latin, Greek. What is the word? What's the root?
So I think epi means above, and feces means to grow. So
Okay.
to grow or above to grow.
It's the root for both words there. Obviously.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, to grow above. So I think you can see the connection just to grow above, you know, something higher.
Anyone else want to ask Fernando anything? Alex?
What was, for some reason I missed it, we were going
I don't
over
blame you.
company and sweetbread, what was that?
You know, he was talking about just the relationships we should have. We're not a corporate world, you know, what we can see now that these people, you know, I was thinking economics of it all, really. You know, at first it would have been, years ago, it would have been hard for me to think, it would have been preposterous to me to say a statement, you know, but we've all heard it. You know, if you just stop getting medical care, remove all those toxins that they're dumping into your body, and these are the same people who are dumping all this stuff into our earth. If we just stop that, we'd be all better off. So going back to the company, I mean, it's like companionship. We get together, kind of help each other out, or for the common good. I'm just making that up right here on the spot. We're sharing bread, companus.
Oh, okay, so actually, like, you're talking about bread, not sweet bread as in the sweet breads?
No, not the sweet breads, but yeah,
Or
no,
the,
not the sweet
oh, okay, I just,
Anyone else like to ask Fernando anything? Edward X.
Fernando, oh,
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I mean, like, I haven't seen a doctor in a long time. I don't really trust them. They've heard a lot of family members. Am I wasting my money, although I'm spending on insurance every month?
You can answer that own question. Apparently, you know, we didn't have insurance, and I've lived without it, and I found solutions. I mean, I have a great network of people I know, but recently we got it, and I was like, oh, I'll go do this. And I was like, just looking up how I was going to do it, I spent probably 45 minutes, and then I was like, I'm gonna have to go do this, and then do this, and then do that. I said, I don't have time for that. I'll just spend the money.
I suppose, you know, I
And
had,
jumping
it
through
for,
all these hoops, they want me to do some. I don't need
I
that.
had it for a few years. And I thought it was a total
But-
waste, and then
But
I had
I
a
do
torn
say,
retina.
you know, we do have. I mean, I was completely out of it. My wife had an ectopic pregnancy, and she went in for that. That was an emergency situation that I don't think we would have resolved otherwise without an intervention. And then my kids playing sports, I go, hey, there's a risk world out here. They're taking risks. A fracture, we need somebody to put that together. So there is a place. I'm not saying there's no place, but you know, obviously they've overstepped their boundaries, you could say.
All right,
It's like
Bob.
snake oil.
Bob?
Fernando, are you aware of the connection of the word corporation to corpse, and also the legal definition in Black's law, a person is a corporation. So-
Yeah. I mean, I'm aware of that stuff. I was trying to point out that corpse thing here, the corpus. It got a little messy. Prescribe was saying the core, the heart, and the puss, but obviously you can see the word corpse in there. And then about the legal entity, yeah, I mean, it's they've almost. I remember thinking about it years ago and going like, I need a corporation. It's like creating this monster, like a Frankenstein, that's gonna go out there and fight these wars for me, and like, you know, live out of this beastly system. Like, I'm gonna create this monster called a corporation, and it's gonna represent, like, go do all this crazy stuff for me.
And are you aware, you know, our name in all capital letters is a corporation, and we're summoned, you know, just like you summoned the dead, when you're summoned to the courts, you're going there to represent your corporation. You, the living soul, is representing the corpse. Are you aware of that?
As aware as I can be at this moment, I've heard that stuff, but I have to get it clear in my head.
Anyone else want to ask Senor Fernando anything?
Yeah.
Everyone excel.
You seem to have a fascination with Irish culture.
Well, it's all to Darby O'Gill, because I tell you, by the time I left Brooklyn, I was done with all the, leprechauns and I had gotten plenty of
Are
it.
you going to go to the St.
Now
Patrick's Day parade?
All I need is Darby O'Gill to lead the people. Now that is like part of me. I don't need probably even to watch it again to know all the intricacies
I'll
of
be
it.
at the parade.
And
I
the
always
incredible,
go.
but
I've been
it goes
there.
to, Ireland had that tradition, and then I look at I was talking to my wife and saying, I look at the tradition of Spain with the bulls. This old ancient thing that people look at now and go, they're killing the bull, it's brutal. And I go, when I see that bull, man, it reminds me of this beast, right? And if you've ever seen, I was getting into the farming stuff, and I had a picture of these bulls, man, and I thought it was like, I guess I'm really not a nature guy, I haven't been hanging out with too many bulls, but when I saw that picture, we recently watched a movie, and they had these images, and I was like, oh, that's CGI, there's no animal that looks like that in this movie. When I saw those pictures of those bulls, man, they look like the most frightening frickin' animals ever, and they're sticking out their chests, and they represent something to us. And those bullfighters standing there with the capes, they are eventually going to kill that bull. They are facing the bull. It's all like a rich. I haven't read this anywhere, but you can see it enacted, through this ritual that they're playing out.
I'd say it's a lot more noble death than a death in the slaughterhouse. I get no problem.
Anyone else want to ask Fernando anything? Anyone?
Will you be at the St. Patrick's Day parade? I'll be. I could have met up with you. I always go.
I think I went to one St. Patrick's Day parade once in Rockaway. I went to so many Irish bars when I was a kid. I'm connected to Ireland forever.
Anyone else want to ask Fernando anything? All right, Fernando, thank you very much. We'll clap for Fernando. Gracias.
Good job. Come on.